time passed. Discussions with my fellow menopausal women turned to sex and birth control. There's no way to know when we'll menstruate. The fluctuation is extraordinary. Are we ovulating if one egg makes it and there's one strong swimmer? Are we willing to make the commitment to a teenager in our senior citizenhood? The answer is a resounding no. So what do we do? Those who are married certainly don't want to turn to condoms with their possibly Viagra-dependent husbands. And those of us who are single don't want to risk reliance on a condom. At our age, the pill doesn't really seem to be an option. We hate the diaphragm, so where does that leave us? We wistfully remember the Today sponge. In the meantime, I'm happy to report that Foe's 60-year-old has made contact again. I went online in search of a better means of birth control and discovered that one can still buy the sponge in Canada, both the Today sponge and a Canadian version that seemed like an excellent option. I ordered enough of the foreign contraband for my friends and me to try. In anticipation of the big day, I decided to have a trial run. I needed to be sure that what went up did in fact come down. I'm happy to report that I had successful insertion and removal. As several girlfriends were eager to hear the outcome, the calls went out and there was great joy in the land. Date day came and Foe's 60-year-old arrived at my door on a Friday night. Knowing what was about to happen, I prepped with a sponge just before arrival. When he arrived, he seemed bolder and more confident. Perhaps it was my new layer of protection. My encounters with him were boosting my confidence. I felt as comfortable with my sexual self as I ever had. His 6-foot frame lifted and moved me into positions I didn't think were possible. Had my leg actually been over my head before? Just as I thought we were done, a surge of energy passed through me and I threw him back with tremendous force, pinning him to the bed, and took him with such abandon we were both surprised. I was exhilarating. The problem is, the morning after waiting the designated amount of time for removal, the moment of truth came. Would sponge removal be as easy as it had been on the trial run? While it had been some time, I had used this particular form of birth control in the past, and I wasn't in completely unfamiliar territory. I tried everything. I reread the instructions. I was beginning to panic. The brochure said to relax. So this is the moment a middle-aged woman who's dating finds the real need for Valium. I took the Valium and decided to wait. Perhaps a glass of wine would assist. It was useless. I gave up and decided to try again the next morning. By the time Monday arrived, I was in a panic. Now, since I don't have a regular doctor, I was to call the unknown gynecologist and make an appointment for sponge removal. I called the office to make an appointment, and they said I was so lucky because they had several appointments over the next week. I explained I really needed to see him today. Of course, she wanted to know why there was any urgency. By the time the conversation was over, I had explained my story to 3 different women on the phone, including the nurse, my predicament. Despite their insights on sponge removal and my precarious situation, the staff still wanted to know how I got a hold of the contraband sponges. I was able to make an appointment for later that day. I arrived at the doctor's office and they were respectful. I traveled down the long hallway for my first meeting with the doctor. Apparently my story had preceded me. He was kind and understanding, and my recent increased libido impressed him. We discussed hot flashes and hormone replacement therapy and birth control. As it turned out, at my advanced stage, the need for birth control was minor. He suggested that in my current menopausal state, using nothing put me at about the same risk of pregnancy that I had in my 20s while using the pill. By adding spermicidal, it became a no-brainer. If I were to add a condom to that, it became the Immaculate Conception. I'm still waiting for God. Thanks.